Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first story is titled, "Can't Use My Cell Phone at Work." Have fun texting me when you want something. I used to work as a manager at a small business. I was the only employee on site during the day, so I was expected to answer the phone, check in deliveries, help walk-in customers, etc. any time they came in. Because I constantly needed to be available, I didn't have a real lunch break. I would just eat my lunch at my desk when I had time. One afternoon, my boss called me on the office phone and very casually asked, "Hey, what's going on? What are you working on?" I told him the project I was in the middle of, and he said, "Really? Because I've been watching the cameras and you've been messing around on your cell phone for the last 5 minutes. I explained to him that my fiancé had texted because there was an emergency that had come up and I was trying to help him handle it, giving him the account information, logins and passwords, etc. since I was working and couldn't handle it. His response was, "I don't care. I don't ever want to catch you on your phone again." I tried to explain that I didn't get any breaks or anything during the day, so I didn't have any of my own time to handle things that may come up, but he didn't care. So, knowing full well that the owners, the other managers, and staff members constantly texted me throughout the day whenever they needed something, I complied. The next day I came in and I left my phone in my purse. I had a smart watch, so I could see when I got a text, but I didn't answer, because I wasn't allowed to be on my phone. After 2 days of me ignoring their requests during the day and only answering their texts after leaving, saying, "Sorry, I didn't see your text because I'm not allowed to be on my phone at work. I've already left for the day," my boss came in and told me we needed to have a discussion. He called me out on my malicious compliance, but also acknowledged that I was essentially locked in the office for 8 hours a day. So, going forward I could take a half-hour lunch break where I didn't have to do anything else, and I was allowed to use my phone during the day, as long as I didn't abuse the privilege. The next story is titled, "Don't Need Soundproofing?" Roger that. In short, I used to do some work in a complex of labs which were leased out to researchers, some of which were specialized, some were general purpose. Every year some tool in admin would interrogate us on exactly why we needed a particular feature of a specialized lab, and if we couldn't make a strong business case we'd get turfed out to one of the shared general purpose labs. This would net more money for the complex as they collected leases from multiple users for each shared lab. One year I was asked to defend my use of a heavily soundproofed lab by writing a business case for why an experiment needed to be done in absolute silence. This was actually just a premise. The reality is that they wanted to clear us out and open the lab up as another shared space. I calmly explained that I couldn't write this as there was no need to conduct my experiments in silence. It was therefore agreed that I would shift my equipment to a new lab and do some calibration trials there with someone from site admin supervising to see if the new space was suitable. Skip to day of the trials. I have to say it was quite refreshing to see a creeping sense of realization wash over admin dude's face when I turned up in a hefty pair of ear defenders with earplugs underneath. In this case the realization that the soundproofing wasn't to protect my experiment from sound. It was to protect everyone else from the sound of my experiment. I explained that during the calibration trials we would send a series of white noise bursts to a receiving microphone and check that the sound pressure read by the mic was close enough to what was supposed to be being sent by the emitter. We'd then adjust gains accordingly. Admin watched as I keyed up the test sequence. Bursts, 500 burst duration, ones, interval, random. Volume, 140 decibels. Context, 140 decibels is roughly on par with the report of a .22 rifle. The lab we were in was about the size of a largish bathroom. It took exactly 8 bursts before I was politely asked to desist, and it was agreed I could return to the soundproof lab. The next story is titled, "Don't Fix the Toilet Because It's Friday." Thanks for the 2-week paid vacation. So I am a physician and worked in this clinic a couple years ago. It's 4 p.m. on a Friday. We had no more patients scheduled. I come out and chat with the receptionist and notice there's a stench sewage coming from the bathroom. Everything looks fine, but the toilet flushes a little slow. The smell brought flashbacks when this had happened at my own house 6 months earlier. I came home from work one day and my shower and bathroom floor had overflowed with crap and sewage. My dog stepped in it and walked all over the house. I'll never forget. So I tell my receptionist to call our office manager and building maintenance. They said they'll come check it out on Monday morning. I said there's gonna be crap in the halls if we wait till then. We called a second time and the maintenance department sends a guy out. I can already tell he's ready to start his weekend already, so he peeks in. Doesn't check anything. Doesn't even flush the toilet. He comes out 5 minutes later and said it's the AC. I said it seems like a plumbing problem. Not sure why the AC unit would emit the stench of crap, but what do I know? I'm just a doctor. He said don't worry about it. He'll get the AC guys to come on Monday. I called the office manager and she said just let maintenance take care of it on Monday. I gave it the college try to convince someone to fix it, but no one wanted to call someone in on a Friday afternoon and stick around to see it through. Not my job. I decide to close the office and go home. It's 6 a.m. in Monday morning. I get woken up by a call from our receptionist and office manager. The toilet had overflowed and flooded the clinic with 2 inches of sewage. It soaked the carpet and up the drywall. We rescheduled all our patients for the week while they replace the floors, tear out the baseboards and drywall, replace the drywall, and have a professional hazardous materials cleanup crew to sanitize and clear us to see patients again. All in all, I was told it costs $10.15K for the cleaning and repairs. I got 2 weeks off with pay since I'm salaried. My salary for those 2 weeks was around $10,000. This doesn't include the 3 hourly staff, nurses and receptionists that were paid to sit and answer phones telling patients we were closed. Who knows how much money was lost in not seeing the patients and billing insurance. I estimate the total cost was around $50,000. My contract ended 2 weeks after that, so that final month was quite nice. The next story is titled, Boss Said We Needed Permission from Him to Take a Break During Our Shift. I worked at a residential treatment center doing direct care with teens. While in most jobs breaks are a built-in and guaranteed part of the workday, this was not the case here. We had compliance concerns around mandatory staff-to-client ratios, and this often made it difficult, sometimes impossible, to get a break during your shift. That being said, most of us working the line had a pretty good system worked out for trying to get folks a break. If we happened to notice that all of the kids and staff were present on the unit at the same time, we'd have someone take a break and then hold off on moving on with programming until they had returned. After working there for approximately 2 years, the guy who ran the residential unit was let go for stealing from the clients. Real nice guy. At this point they hired a new guy to take over. He had not worked at our agency before, he had not ever done direct care himself before, but he did have experience in administrative positions in agencies similar to ours. He came in as most administrators do that have no experience of the job and thought he knew best about everything. Pretty quickly he became concerned that we were taking advantage of taking breaks throughout the day, which could not have been further from the truth. Again, most days you were lucky if you got one break at all, and that includes while working double shifts. So he came up with the plan that in order to take a break you needed his permission. During the daytime when he was present at the unit, this was not a huge deal, as you could simply walk over and ask him. This immediately became a problem, however, for staff working evening, overnight and weekend shifts who would need to call him to get permission. Anyway, I'm someone who is always up for following the rules, so during my first shift, I was shift supervisor and therefore responsible for the other staff working during my shifts. I asked everyone to please do as he had asked. By the end of that first shift, not one person had gotten a break. Each time we had an opportunity, ratio-wise we'd give him a call, which he wouldn't answer. By the time he called back 30 minutes to an hour later, the opportunity was gone. When I showed up the next day, I explained to him what had happened the previous evening and asked him to reconsider. He refused. So, I did what any logical person would do. I told my staff to call him when they wanted a break, and if he didn't answer they were to call again and again until we reached him. He probably received upwards of 40 phone calls that shift, I should note, of which he answered none. Sadly, this did not result in any of us getting a break that night, but by the time I showed up for my shift the next day, we had an email from him letting us know that we no longer needed to call him and get his permission for breaks. The next story is titled, No Phone Use in the Aircraft Operating Area. No exceptions. Fine, we will do it your way. Before I had all of my pilot ratings and my job flying, I was working as a quality control supervisor for a fueling company at a major airport in the US. My job had me as the person ultimately on the hook for the correct and safe operation of all fuel equipment for the company, as well as one of two responsible for the personnel training to use said equipment. Basically 80 pieces of machinery and 160 people were my problem at any given time. Sure, I had bosses that had responsibilities, but the poop ran downhill to me and the fuelers bitched up to my level. I got it from both sides. Standard policy for being on the AOA aircraft operating area, i.e. the ramp, is absolutely no cell phone use. This is for safety, as that environment is full of hazards and even a momentary distraction can be disastrous. Well, as I supervised the entire operation, I couldn't simultaneously monitor the 6 different radio channels we had. As such, my work phone was routinely my communication device, as I would get calls from fuelers, leads, management, maintenance, airline operations departments, fire inspector, parts suppliers, etc. Heck, I even had my own Secret Service agent to call for VIP flights, not just Air Force One, but any visiting head of state. To say my work phone was an electronic leash would be an understatement. I was standing near the terminal building in an area far removed from aircraft, but still part of the AOA, and the ramp patrol airport compliance officers essentially saw me, didn't care for my reasons, and issued me a citation. Get too many of these and your ID is revoked, effectively getting yourself fired. Okay, no phone on the ramp, gotcha covered, boss. Pretty soon airline reps couldn't reach me, and as such aircraft delays went up. The fire inspector couldn't reach me, so equipment was tagged out of service for minor things easily fixed. The airport duty manager (ADM) person in charge of the operations of the airport couldn't reach me, so all hell broke loose. I told everyone when asked that I was merely complying with the rules, as I didn't want any more points on my ID, as I prided myself on rules compliance, sort of have to when your business card says Quality Control Supervisor. About 3 weeks into all of this, with 7 delays, 10 in a year is a bad thing, already hitting us, the ADM calls me and asks if I was available that afternoon. I go up to his office and he explains that they are amending the rules so as to allow the use of cell phones in designated areas away from aircraft as well as when in a stationary vehicle. Also, my citation would be wiped. Now, would I please start carrying my phone? I laughed for a while at that small victory. The next story is titled, I'll let you know every time I use my garbage can. I've never met anyone that said, oh good, and hoa. We all have trash cans, but the sight of them offends the delicate eyes of some, so I complied with the new rule of no seeing bins from the street. I find a notice of my bins being out, which is surprising because I'm the only one who touches the cans and I know I'm 100% compliant. I call in and ask why I got the notice. The full description says bins in driveway with lids off. I asked if this happened to be a Tuesday, and sure enough it was. Wednesday is pickup, and I was doing my weekly cleaning. I was ducking using them, I calmly explained through gritted teeth. Oh okay, I'll remove the notice. Great, but how do I prevent this from happening again? I guess notify us. Alright, I said, I'll notify you every time I'm using my trash cans. Oh, that won't be necessary. Clearly it is. That was 5 Tuesdays ago. Today, I once again called promptly at 10 o'clock and let Alan know I was about to use my trash cans. You know what, Mr. Endoman? I'm just going to put a hold on any trash can notices for you. Hey, that would be swell, Alan. That would be swell. The next story is titled, Speak to me in my native white language. If you insist, sir. I used to work at a gas station in a pretty culturally diverse area, but overall was basically the border between a very rural area and a suburban area in Florida. The suburban area was more culturally diverse with the different businesses around and access to the highway. The rural area was what you would call redneck country, and anyone who lived there would tell you the same. I'm Filipino and those features kind of show. I have high cheekbones, dark hair, dark eyes, and somewhat tanned skin. I'm more light-skinned because my mum is white, so it throws some people off, but I'm almost never identified as Filipino because I speak Spanish. In that particular area, we had a lot of Spanish customers, so some would overhear me speak to them in Spanish and either look surprised that I knew how to speak it, or more commonly, mistaken me for being Hispanic. One morning, at around 4:30, 5 o'clock, a Hispanic regular came in and got his usual coffee, water bottle, and a pastry of some kind that we sold. We'd usually talk while he made his coffee because we'd just opened up and it was dead around that time. He was on his way out to head to work when another, easily 6 feet middle-aged, white gentleman swung open the door with a very annoyed expression. I was caught off guard not only because he swung open the door aggressively, but because there was no other car in the parking lot or at any pumps, so I had no idea where he came from. My regular tells me adios, so I naturally responded with paz un buen dia. I think my mistake was that I looked at my new customer before I was done speaking to the previous one, and this made him very angry. He started yelling at me saying I was being racist and that I was racially profiling him. What he meant by that, I still don't know. I apologized and tried to explain that I was talking to the other man walking out of the door, and he cut me off and told me to speak to him in his native white language, putting a heavy emphasis on white when he said it. I then began to say random phrases I could remember in various languages like French, German, Italian, threw a little Polish in there, and he went off. Stop. I can't understand what you're saying, you ducking border rat bitch. Honestly, that was a new one for me, but I stopped as requested. I looked at him with the biggest smile on my face and told him, I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know which white language you wanted me to use, so I was trying all of them to see which one it was. He started calling me racist again, claiming he was going to call corporate on me for racially discriminating against him and not giving him service. I told him that I didn't know what he wanted me to do for him yet because he was too busy racially profiling me and spitting racial slurs at me for me to ask him. He smiled smugly and said nobody is going to believe my illegal ass that he said any of that anyway. I politely pointed to the cameras around the store and told him that I had 8 different angles of him saying all of it to me. His smile vanished. He told me to duck off and go to hell and stormed out. Honestly, to this day, I have no idea where he came from or what he needed from the store, but that experience hasn't and probably won't ever leave me. Sir, wherever you are now, I hope you're a little more cultured and at the very least understand that not all white people speak English. The next story is titled, and this is my 2-week notice. This story occurred about a year ago, but requires some background. This might be a little long. I worked at a local golf course for about 7 years, from when I was 13 to 20. When I had first started there, my mother was the manager of all things food and beverage until that summer, because she took on a different job. Working there for so long put me in line to be the new manager. However, I was not willing to take the position because I was enrolled in college and wouldn't have the time for it, and considering my mother worked 100-hour-plus weeks sometimes in our busy season, one wasn't willing. So they brought in Addie to replace my mother as food and beverage manager, and I was another regular employee. The golf course also has a general manager who we will call Chad. Chad sucks. He was creepy towards all the girls that worked there, and had a terrible temper. One similar to a toddler. We never saw eye to eye on anything, especially his management style, and was always getting on my case even though I was the only person on the food and beverage side of things that knew what was up and how to do anything, including Addie. So this brings us to the story. I was working in our little restaurant serving our golf leagues that come in. One league in particular liked to stay really late, like 12 AM to 1 AM, but I never really minded as I got along well with them and I became good friends with a lot of the members. And they were always buying beer, shots, so there was never much of an issue with it. When Addie started there, Chad decided to change up our dining room policies to close the restaurant at 10:30 PM. This personally really aggravated me. They were paying customers and I was happy to serve them, and I was the only one that was usually serving them. But Chad kept going on about labor costs, which if anyone reading this knows anything about serving, I wasn't making much hourly and was relying on tips to make money. So they put this into place, and I tell Chad it's his responsibility to tell the league they have to leave at 10:30 and not me. He didn't. And guess what? The league members were pissed. First mistake. Addie would not often, or honestly never, stay to help with the leagues but was adamant about the new hours. As she is about to head out for the day, she tells me that I will be training 2 girls in the restaurant that night. We have about 80 extremely needy golfers in the restaurant at once. On this night in particular, I barely had time to train one, but she did not stay to help out with that. Looking back on it, it was definitely not my responsibility to train anyone, either. But I was willing to help out as she was still getting adjusted to the job, and she knew that and took advantage of that. Second mistake. Then mentions to me that if I am not clocked out by 10:50 PM then I will not be paid for any work after the fact. Third mistake. I ended up training one of the girls on our POS computer and told her she was done for the day and that she can clock out. and continued to train the other girl for the rest of the evening. So when the leagues left at 10:30, there was food on the floor, bathrooms weren't cleaned, trash was not taken out, the tables were moved from their normal resting place, and the drawer wasn't counted. I told the girl I was training to move the tables, and I counted the drawer. Well, it's 10:50 now and I'm not working for free. So we clocked out and left. Could I have done more? Absolutely, but I needed to prove a point. The next morning I had many missed calls from Chad and Addie. I didn't have to come in for 2 days, so I just let them keep calling. So on the next shift day I finally called Chad back. He told me to come in for a meeting with him and Addie. When I get there, he gives me a story about how he had to come in and clean everything up with Addie, and why would I ever do something like that. I told him that Addie not only had me training 2 people on our busiest night of the week, alone, but I also had to be out at 10:50 or I was told I wasn't being paid. After going back and forth about how Addie was just kidding, and I shouldn't take things so seriously, I had finally had enough of Chad and his antics. I told them I was putting in my 2 weeks, and the looks on their faces were as if I had shot someone right in front of them. It was awesome. I continued to work for the next 2 weeks, doing everything I was supposed to and training Addie on any little detail I could think of before I left. After my 2 weeks was up, I ended up getting calls from Addie and Chad all the time because nothing was going right. I was asked again by Chad to take Addie's position on, and Addie was calling me telling me how impossible Chad is to work with. It was truly beautiful to watch all the chaos unfold even after I left. Addie ended up quitting a month after because her and Chad couldn't get along. I don't miss much about the job or place, but I do miss my regulars every day. If any of y'all are reading this, I hope you're doing well. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel and post some bear emojis in the comment.